Jake Miller thought he had the perfect life. He worked as a computer programmer in a quiet town outside Chicago, fixing software problems for small businesses every morning. He'd drive his old blue Toyota to work, grab coffee from the same cafe, and spend his day writing code that made other people's lives easier. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave him a sense of purpose. What made his life truly special was his wife, Luna. They'd been married for 3 years, and Jake still couldn't believe how lucky he was. Luna was incredible in ways that sometimes left him speechless. She was smart enough to help him solve work problems he'd been stuck on for hours. She was kind to everyone they met, from their elderly neighbor to the teenager who delivered their groceries, and she had this amazing ability to make him feel safe and loved even on his worst days. But Luna wasn't like other people, though Jake couldn't quite put his finger on why. She barely slept, often staying awake until 3 or 4 in the morning, reading books or staring out their bedroom window at the stars. When Jake asked her about it, she'd just smile and say she wasn't tired. Most people needed 8 hours of sleep, but Luna seemed perfectly fine with just 2 or 3. She also knew things that seemed impossible for someone to know. Once, they were watching a documentary about ancient Rome, and Luna started talking about daily life in the city like she'd actually been there. She described the smell of the markets, the sound of chariot wheels on stone streets, and the way people dressed in different seasons. When Jake asked where she'd learned all this, Luna just shrugged and said she'd always been good at history. The strangest thing about Luna was how she could read people. She'd meet someone for the first time and within minutes know if they were honest, if they were having a bad day, or if they were trying to hide something. At parties, she quietly warned Jake about people who turned out to be trouble later. At the grocery store, she'd steer them away from cashiers who were having family problems, saying they needed space. Jake thought she was just really good at picking up on body language and facial expressions. Luna claimed she didn't remember much about her childhood. She said she'd grown up in different foster homes after her parents died in a car accident. When she was very young, she had no relatives, no childhood friends, and no photos from before she turned 18. Jake felt terrible for her, having grown up in a loving family with parents who still called him every Sunday. He tried to make up for her lack of family by including her in every Miller family gathering, and his parents adored her. Their life together was simple and happy. They lived in a small house with a garden where Luna grew vegetables that somehow always turned out perfect, even when the neighbors complained about bad weather ruining their crops. They'd spend evenings watching movies, taking walks around their neighborhood, or sitting on their back porch talking about their dreams for the future. Everything changed on a Tuesday night in October. Jake had been working late on a particularly difficult project and decided to walk home instead of driving to clear his head. The route took him through the older part of town, past empty warehouses and closed businesses. He liked the quiet, and the cool air helped him think as he walked past an old auto repair shop. He heard voices coming from the alley behind it. Something in the tone made him stop and listen. The voices were angry, threatening. Jake crept closer and peered around the corner of the building. 4 men stood in a circle near a dark van. 3 of them were clearly upset with the 4th, who kept backing away with his hands raised. Jake couldn't hear everything they were saying, but he caught enough to understand this wasn't a friendly conversation. Words like payment, last chance, and big mistake drifted over to where he was hiding. Then one of the angry men pulled something from his jacket. Even in the dim light from a distant street lamp, Jake could see it was a weapon. His heart started pounding. This was serious. This was dangerous. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not in real life in his quiet town. The man with the weapon kept waving it around while talking. The scared man kept apologizing and promising that everything would be fine, that he just needed more time. Jake watched, frozen, as the situation got worse and worse. Finally, the 3 angry men got back in their van and drove off, leaving the 4th man alone in the alley. Jake got a clear look at the van's license plate as it passed under a street light. Without thinking, he memorized the numbers and letters. Years of remembering complex computer passwords had given him a good memory for details like that. The next morning, Jake couldn't stop thinking about what he'd seen. He'd witnessed what was clearly some kind of criminal activity, and someone had been threatened with a weapon. He knew the right thing to do was report it to the police. After all, what if those men came back? What if they hurt someone next time? So during his lunch break, Jake drove to the police station and told an officer everything he'd seen. He described the men, the van, and gave them the license plate number. The officer took notes, asked a few questions, and thanked Jake for being a good citizen. Jake felt proud of himself for doing the right thing. He had no idea he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The phone call started 2 days later. Jake was making dinner when their home phone rang. Luna was in the garden, so he answered it himself. "Hello," he said. A deep, rough voice replied, "You need to mind your own business. I'm sorry. Who's this?" "Someone who knows what you did. Someone who knows you talked to the cops about things that weren't your concern." Jake's blood turned cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." The alley behind Morrison's auto shop. Tuesday night. Ring any bells? Jake almost dropped the phone. How did they know? How had they found him? "You made a mistake," the voice continued. "A big mistake. Smart people learn from their mistakes. Are you smart, Jake?" The line went dead. Jake stood there holding the phone, his hand shaking. Someone knew his name. Someone knew where he lived. Someone knew he'd been a witness to whatever had happened in that alley. When Luna came inside a few minutes later, she took one look at his face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked, setting down her basket of vegetables. "Wrong number," Jake lied. He didn't want to worry her. He told himself it was probably just someone trying to scare him, that nothing would actually happen. But as Luna studied his face with those unusually perceptive eyes of hers, Jake realized he wasn't fooling anyone. For just a moment, he thought he saw something flicker across her expression, something that looked almost like anger, but darker and more intense than any emotion he'd ever seen on her gentle face. "Are you sure it was just a wrong number?" she asked quietly. Jake nodded, but he could tell she didn't believe him. And as the evening wore on, he noticed Luna doing things she'd never done before. She checked all the locks on their doors and windows twice. She kept looking out the front window at the street. And when they went to bed, she lay awake long after. Jake had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling with an expression he couldn't read. Something had changed in their perfect little life. And Jake had the sinking feeling that things were about to get much worse. That Friday evening felt like the longest night of Jake's life. He and Luna sat in their living room with all the curtains closed and the lights dimmed. Luna had insisted they stay away from the windows, and she kept getting up every few minutes to check the security cameras on her phone. Jake tried to watch television to distract himself, but he couldn't focus on anything. His mind kept racing with questions about what these dangerous people would do when they came. Would they break down the front door? Would they try to sneak in through the back? How many of them would there be? But the question that bothered him most was how Luna seemed so calm about everything. She sat beside him on the couch, holding his hand. But her breathing was steady and her grip was firm. She looked like someone preparing for battle, not someone terrified about criminals coming to their home. Around 10 o'clock, Luna's phone buzzed with an alert from their security cameras. She looked at the screen and her expression changed completely. "They're here," she said quietly. "3 men, just like you described from the alley. They're walking up our driveway right now." Jake's heart started pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. "What do we do? Should we call the police?" Luna stood up and walked to the front window. She moved the curtain just slightly and peered outside. "The police are 20 minutes away on a good day. These men will be inside our house in less than 2 minutes. Then we hide. We lock ourselves in the bedroom and wait for them to leave." Luna turned to look at him, and Jake saw something in her eyes that he'd never seen before. They seemed to glow with their own light, like a cat's eyes in the dark. "Jake, there's something I need to tell you, something I should have told you a long time ago." "Can it wait until after these people leave?" "No, because after tonight, everything is going to be different between us. You're going to see who I really am, and I need you to understand why." The sound of footsteps on their front porch made Jake jump. Luna remained perfectly still, like she was listening to something he couldn't hear. "They're checking our locks," she said. "They'll try the back door next, then look for an unlocked window. We have maybe 3 minutes before they find a way inside." 3 minutes for what? Luna sat back down beside him and took both his hands in hers. "Jake, I'm not who you think I am. I'm not even what you think I am." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm not human." Jake stared at her, waiting for her to smile or laugh or tell him she was joking. But Luna's expression remained completely serious. "That's impossible," he said. "Is it? Think about everything you've noticed about me over the past 3 years. The way I barely need sleep. How I know things about history that I shouldn't know. The way I can read people's intentions just by looking at them. How I fixed your computer problem in minutes when you've been working on it for days." Jake's mind raced back through their relationship, remembering all the little things that had seemed unusual, but not impossible. Luna's perfect garden that grew, vegetables even in bad weather, the way she never got sick, even when everyone else at work had the flu. How she always seemed to know when storms were coming before the weather reports mentioned them. "But you look human," Jake said weakly. "That's because I'm supposed to. My people have technology that lets us blend in perfectly with your society. We've been living among humans for decades, studying your culture, learning about your world." The sound of breaking glass came from somewhere in the back of their house. Luna's head snapped toward the noise like a predator hearing prey. "They're inside," she said. "Jake, I need you to stay here and don't move, no matter what you see or hear. Can you promise me that? I don't understand any of this. What people? What technology? Where are you from?" Luna stood up, and as she did, something impossible happened. Her appearance began to change. Her skin took on a faint shimmer, like light reflecting off water. Her eyes became brighter, more intense, glowing with that inner light Jake had glimpsed. Before, even her hair seemed to move differently, flowing around her face as if she were underwater. "I'm from a star system you call Centauri," she said, and her voice had changed too. It was still Luna's voice, but it carried an otherworldly quality that made Jake's skin tingle. "My real name is Zara. I'm part of a team sent to observe and study human civilization." "This is insane," Jake whispered. "I know how it sounds. I know it's a lot to process. But Jake, you have to understand something important. When I came here, this was just supposed to be a job. I was supposed to watch, learn, and report back to my superiors. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with a human." Footsteps echoed through their house as the intruders moved from room to room, searching for them. "But I did fall in love with you," Luna continued. "And in my culture, when we bond with someone, we protect them with our lives. These men threatening you, hurting you, trying to harm what's mine, that's not something I can allow." "Luna, my name is Zara," she corrected gently. "And I need you to know that everything I told you about loving you was true. That part was never pretend." The footsteps were getting closer. Jake could hear the men talking to each other in low voices as they moved through their house. "What are you going to do?" Jake asked. Zara's appearance continued to change. Her fingernails grew longer and sharper. Her muscles seemed to become more defined under her clothes. When she smiled, Jake could see that her teeth looked different, too, still human, but somehow more dangerous. "I'm going to do what my people do when someone threatens our family," she said. "I'm going to make sure these men never bother you again. You can't fight 3 armed men by yourself. Jake, you still don't understand. I'm not just Luna, the quiet woman who grows vegetables and helps you with computer problems. I'm Zara, a warrior from an advanced civilization. I've been trained since childhood to handle situations exactly like this one." The bedroom door at the end of their hallway creaked open. One of the intruders called out, "We know you're here. Come out and we can discuss this like civilized people." Zara laughed, and the sound sent chills down Jake's spine. It wasn't Luna's gentle laugh. This laugh belonged to someone who found the idea of these men being a threat genuinely amusing. "Stay here," she told Jake one more time. what you're about. To see might be frightening, but remember that I'm still the same person who loves you. I'm just showing you a side of myself that I've kept hidden, Sarah. Wait, but she was already moving toward the hallway where the voices were coming from. As she walked, her movements changed completely. Gone was Luna's casual, relaxed way of walking. This was the stride of a predator, silent and deadly, moving toward prey that had no idea what was about to happen to them. Jake sat frozen on their couch, his mind reeling from everything Zara had just told him. His wife was an alien. She was part of some kind of observation mission. She had technology and abilities that he couldn't even imagine, and she was about to use those abilities to protect him from 3 dangerous men who had broken into their home. As the sounds of confrontation began to echo through their house, Jake realized that his quiet, ordinary life was over forever. Whatever happened next, whatever he was about to witness, would change everything he thought he knew about the world, about his marriage, and about the woman he loved. The only question now was whether he could handle the truth about who Zara really was. Jake sat on the couch, his hands shaking as sounds came from the hallway that he couldn't quite understand. There were voices, then sudden silence, then what sounded like furniture being moved very quickly. The whole thing lasted maybe 30 seconds before everything went quiet again. When Zara walked back into the living room, she looked exactly like Luna again. Her skin had returned to normal. Her eyes weren't glowing anymore, and she moved with her usual gentle grace. But Jake could see something different in her expression. She looked satisfied, like someone who had just finished an important task. What happened to them? Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. They left, Zara said simply. They won't be bothering you anymore. They just left after breaking into our house? Zara sat down beside him and took his hand. Jake, they realized they had made a serious mistake. Sometimes people need to have situations explained to them in terms they can understand. Jake wanted to ask more questions, but before he could speak, Zara's phone started buzzing with an incoming call. She looked at the screen and her face went pale. I have to take this, she said, standing up and walking to the far corner of the room. Jake couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but he could tell it was serious. Zara spoke in a language he'd never heard before, with sounds and rhythms that seemed impossible for human vocal cords to make. Her tone grew more tense with each exchange, and by the end of the call, she looked genuinely worried for the first time since this whole nightmare began. That was my supervisor, she said when she came back to the couch. We have a problem. A big problem? Bigger than armed criminals breaking into our house, much bigger. My people know what happened tonight. They know I used my abilities to protect you, and they're not happy about it. Jake felt a new kind of fear creeping up his spine. What does that mean? It means I broke the most important rule of our mission. We're supposed to observe your society without interfering. We're definitely not supposed to reveal ourselves to humans. And we're absolutely not supposed to use our technology or abilities where they might be witnessed. But you were protecting me. Surely they understand that. Zara shook her head. My people don't think the way humans do about relationships. To them, I've compromised our entire operation for the sake of one individual. They see it as a betrayal of everything our mission stands for. Over the next few days, Jake learned just how serious the situation had become. Zara received multiple calls from her supervisors, each one more demanding than the last. They wanted her to return immediately for questioning. They wanted her to submit a full report about everything that had happened, and they kept asking. About Jake, they want to know if you're a security risk, Zara explained one morning over breakfast. They want to know if you'll keep their secret or if you'll try to tell other people about what you've learned. What did you tell them? I told them you could be trusted. But Jake, I don't think they believe me. They think all humans are unpredictable and dangerous. Things got worse when Jake went back to work the following Monday. He tried to act normal, but he kept thinking about everything Zara had told him. During his lunch break, he did some research online about unexplained phenomena and UFO sightings. He wasn't looking for proof of aliens exactly, but he wanted to understand if other people had experienced anything similar. What he found online made him nervous. There were stories about people who claimed to have encountered beings from other worlds, and many of those stories ended badly. People disappeared or had their memories erased, or suddenly changed their stories completely and denied everything they had previously said. When Jake got home that evening, he found Zara packing a suitcase. "Where are you going?" he asked. "We're going," she corrected. "Both of us. My supervisors have decided that this situation requires immediate attention. They're sending someone to meet with us, and it has to be somewhere private where we won't be interrupted." "What kind of meeting?" Zara stopped packing and looked at him directly. "The kind where they decide what to do about the fact that a human knows about our presence on Earth." Jake felt his stomach drop. "And what are the options?" "I don't want to scare you, but my people take security very seriously. They've been operating on Earth for decades without anyone discovering them, and they want to keep it that way. Zara, tell me the truth. Are they going to hurt me?" She was quiet for a long moment before answering. "They're going to evaluate whether you pose a threat to their mission. If they decide you do, they'll take steps to neutralize that threat." "What kind of steps?" "They could erase your memories of everything that's happened. They could relocate you somewhere far away from me and give you a completely new identity. Or," she trailed off without finishing the sentence, "or what? Or they could decide that the risk is too great and that more permanent measures are necessary." Jake sat down heavily on their bed. "So my choices are to forget you completely, disappear forever, or worse. Those are their choices, not yours," Zara said firmly. "And I'm not going to let any of those things happen to you. How can you stop them? You said yourself that you're already in trouble for protecting me, because I'm not the only one involved in this anymore. The criminals who threatened you, they didn't just disappear after our encounter. They started talking to people about what they saw. Word is spreading through certain circles about a woman with unusual abilities." Jake's blood ran cold. "What kind of word?" "There's a man named Victor Petrov who runs criminal operations throughout this region. He collects unusual things and sells them to wealthy buyers who don't ask questions. When his men told him about what happened at our house, he became very interested in finding me. What does he want? He wants to capture me and sell me to the highest bidder. Victor has connections with government agencies, private collectors, and research facilities that would pay millions for a living alien specimen." Jake felt like the room was spinning. "So now we have your own people wanting to eliminate me, and this Victor person wanting to capture you? It gets worse. Victor's people have been asking questions around town about us. They've been showing our photos to people, offering money for information about where we live and work. It's only a matter of time before they track us down. Why don't we just run away, leave town, change our names, start over somewhere else?" Zara shook her head. "My people can track me anywhere on Earth using technology you can't imagine. And Victor has resources and connections that span multiple countries. Running would only delay the inevitable. Then what do? We face this head on. My supervisor is arriving tomorrow night to assess the situation. Victor's people are closing in on our location, and I have to make a choice that will determine the rest of our lives." "What choice?" Zara finished packing and zipped up the suitcase. "I have to choose between following my people's orders and protecting you. I have to choose between my duty to my mission and my love for my husband. I have to choose between being the loyal soldier I was trained to be and being the woman I've become since meeting you." Jake stood up and put his arms around her. "What are you going to choose?" "I already chose," Zara said, holding him tight. "I chose you the moment I fell in love with you. I chose you when I revealed my true nature to protect you, and I'll choose you again tomorrow night, no matter what the consequences are." As they held each other in their bedroom, Jake realized that their quiet life in the suburbs was over forever. Tomorrow would bring a confrontation that would determine whether they had any future together at all. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Jake felt a spark of hope, because he finally understood that he wasn't facing this alone. He had someone on his side who was willing to risk everything for him, someone whose love was stronger than duty or fear or the vast distances between stars. He just hoped it would be enough to keep them both alive. The meeting place Zara chose was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Jake drove them there just after sunset, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as they pulled into the empty parking lot. The building looked like it hadn't been used in years, with broken windows and weeds growing through cracks in the concrete. "Are you sure about this?" Jake asked as they sat in the car, looking at the dark building. "No," Zara admitted, "but it's the only way to end this without more people getting hurt." They got out of the car and walked toward the warehouse. Zara had changed back into her alien form, her skin shimmering slightly in the fading light. She wanted her supervisor to see that she wasn't trying to hide anything anymore. Inside the warehouse, they didn't have to wait long. A bright light appeared in the center of the empty space, growing larger and brighter until Jake had to shield his eyes. When the light faded, 3 figures stood where it had been. The aliens looked similar to Zara, but more intimidating. They were taller, with skin that seemed to shift colors in the dim light. Their eyes glowed with the same inner fire Jake had seen in Zara, but colder and more distant. The one in the center, who was clearly the leader, looked at Jake like he was examining an interesting but dangerous animal. "I am Commander Dex," the leader said, speaking perfect English with an accent Jake couldn't place. "You are the human who has learned our secrets." "His name is Jake," Zara said firmly. "And he's my husband." Commander Dex looked at Zara with disappointment. "Agent Zara, you have violated every protocol we established for this mission. You were supposed to observe, not interfere. You were supposed to remain hidden, not reveal yourself. And you were definitely not supposed to form emotional attachments with the subjects of our study." "I fell in love," Zara replied simply. "That wasn't part of the plan, but it happened anyway. Love is a chemical reaction." One of the other aliens said dismissively, "It can be controlled, redirected, or eliminated entirely. We have technology that can fix this problem." Jake stepped forward, even though every instinct told him to run. "She doesn't need to be fixed. What we have together is real, and it's not a problem to be solved." Commander Dex studied Jake for a long moment. "You speak boldly for someone whose life hangs in the balance. Do you understand the situation you're in?" "I understand that you're here to decide whether to let me live or not," Jake said. "But I also understand that Zara loves me enough to risk everything for me. That has to count for something." Before the commander could respond, the sound of vehicles approaching echoed through the warehouse. Car doors slammed, and voices shouted orders in the distance. "Victor's people," Zara said grimly. "They tracked us here." Commander Dex looked annoyed. "More humans? How many people know about our presence?" "Victor Petrov runs a criminal organization," Zara explained quickly. "He wants to capture me and sell me to the highest bidder. His men have been hunting us for days." The warehouse doors burst open, and a dozen armed men poured inside. They spread out in a semicircle, their weapons pointed at the group in the center of the building. A well-dressed man with gray hair walked in behind them, clearly the one in charge. Well, Victor said with a cold smile. "This is much more interesting than I expected. Not just one alien, but 4 of them. My buyers are going to be very excited." Commander Dex turned to face Victor, and even in the dim light, Jake could see that the alien leader was not impressed. "You are interrupting an official proceeding. Leave immediately or face the consequences." Victor laughed. "Official proceeding? You're trespassing in an abandoned building. The only official thing happening here is me claiming my prize." He gestured to his men, who raised their weapons. "Take them alive if possible, but don't let any of them escape." What happened next was unlike anything Jake had ever imagined. Commander Dex and the other 2 aliens moved with speed that made Zara look slow by comparison. Light erupted from devices on their arms, creating barriers that the criminals' weapons couldn't penetrate. The aliens fought with a coordination that suggested they'd worked together for years, each one knowing exactly what the others would do. But Victor's men had come prepared for a fight. They had equipment that Jake didn't recognize, devices that seemed designed specifically for capturing beings with unusual abilities. Energy nets flew through the air, and strange machines hummed with power as they tried to contain the aliens' Dodin. The chaos of the battle, Jake realized something important. He wasn't just a helpless bystander in this conflict. He had skills that could help. Knowledge that none of the others possessed. Jake pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. His years as a computer programmer had taught him how to hack into various systems. And Victor's men were using electronic equipment that relied on wireless communications. If he could disrupt their coordination, he might be able to help tip the balance of the fight within minutes. Jake had managed to hack into the criminals' communication network. He started sending false orders, confusing their tactical coordination. He also managed to access the city's emergency systems and sent alerts to the police. About an armed disturbance at the warehouse. The tide of the battle began to turn. Victor's men found their equipment malfunctioning, their communications scrambled, and their coordination falling apart. Commander Vex and his team pressed their advantage, systematically disabling the criminals without seriously harming them. Victor himself tried to escape, but Zara caught him before he could reach the door. She held him firmly but gently, showing the restraint that Jake had always admired in her. "It's over," she told Victor. "Your men are defeated, the police are on their way, and you have no way to profit from what you've seen here tonight." "What? I've seen?" Victor snarled. "I've seen proof that aliens are living among us. That information alone is worth millions." Commander Vex approached Victor, his eyes glowing brighter. "You will remember nothing of what happened here tonight. You will believe that you and your men were involved in a failed robbery attempt. You will have no memory of aliens or unusual abilities." Victor's expression went blank as the alien commander touched his forehead. The same thing happened to each of his men, their memories being carefully edited to remove any trace of the night's extraordinary events. When the police arrived, they found Victor and his crew confused and disoriented, with no clear memory of why they had broken into the warehouse. Their equipment appeared to be nothing more than standard criminal tools, and they were arrested for trespassing and attempted burglary. After the police left with their prisoners, Commander Vex turned to Jake and Zara. "You fought well tonight, both of you." The human showed resourcefulness and loyalty. The agent showed wisdom in choosing such a partner. "What happens now?" Zara asked. "Now we face the reality of the situation," Commander Vex replied. "Agent Zara, you have violated our protocols, but you have also demonstrated qualities that may be valuable to our mission going forward. Your bond with this human has given you insights into their society that our other agents lack." He paused, studying them both carefully. "I am prepared to offer you a new assignment. Instead of simple observation, you will serve as a cultural liaison. Your mission will be to deepen our understanding of human relationships and social bonds. Your husband will serve as your primary research subject and cultural advisor." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You mean we can stay together?" "Not only stay together," Commander Vex said, "but your relationship will become an official part of our scientific mission. You will help us understand how humans and our people might coexist peacefully in the future." Zara looked stunned. "Sir, I don't know what to say. Say that you accept the assignment. Say that you will use your unique position to build bridges between our species. Say that love, as you call it, can be a tool for understanding rather than just a distraction from duty." Jake and Zara looked at each other, and Jake saw tears of relief in her eyes. "We accept," they said together. 6 months later, Jake and Zara lived in a new house in a quiet town to states away. To their neighbors, they were simply a young couple who worked from home as consultants for an international research company. They grew vegetables in their garden, walked their dog in the evenings, and seemed perfectly ordinary. But Jake now knew about the vast network of aliens living among humans, working to understand Earth's societies and cultures. He helped Zara write reports about human behavior, relationships, and social customs in return. She taught him about her people's technology, their history, and their hopes for peaceful contact with humanity in the future. Their love story had become something bigger than either of them had ever imagined. They weren't just husband and wife anymore. They were ambassadors between two worlds. Proof that understanding and connection could bridge even the vast distances between stars. The threatening phone calls didn't stop after that first one. Over the next week, Jake received 3 more calls, each one more frightening than the last. The voice was always the same, deep, rough, and completely serious about the danger Jake was in. "You think the police can protect you?" the voice said during the second call. "Think again. Accidents happen to people who don't know when to keep quiet," came the third call. By the fourth call, the person wasn't even bothering with threats anymore. "You have until Friday to call the police back and tell them you were wrong about what you saw. Tell them you made a mistake. Do it, or you'll regret it for the rest of your very short life." Jake tried to act normal around Luna, but she wasn't fooled. She could see right through his attempts to pretend everything was fine. Her unusual ability to read people made it impossible for him to hide his growing fear. "Someone's bothering you," she said one evening as they sat on their couch watching television. "It wasn't a question." "It's nothing," Jake replied, but his voice shook slightly. Luna turned to look at him directly in the lamplight. Her eyes seemed to shine with an intensity that made Jake uncomfortable. "Tell me what's happening." So Jake told her everything, about witnessing the confrontation in the alley, about reporting it to the police, and about the phone calls that followed. With each detail he shared, Luna's expression grew darker and more serious. When he finished talking, Luna was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "You did the right thing by reporting what you saw. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about that." "But what if they really do try to hurt me?" Jake asked. Luna reached over and took his hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "They won't," she said with absolute certainty. "I won't let them." Jake wanted to ask how she could be so sure, but something in her tone told him not to push the subject. Instead, he just squeezed her hand back and tried to feel reassured. The next day, things got worse. Jake walked out to his car in the morning and found all 4 tires slashed. Deep cuts ran along the sidewalls, making the tires completely useless. A note was tucked under his windshield wiper. "This is your car today. Tomorrow it could be you." Jake's hands trembled as he read the note. These people knew where he lived. They'd been in his driveway while he slept. They could have easily broken into his house if they'd wanted to. When Luna saw the damage, her reaction was unlike anything Jake had ever witnessed from his usually calm wife. Her face went completely pale, then flushed red with anger. Her hands clenched into fists at her sides, and for a moment, Jake thought he saw her fingernails look longer and sharper than they should be. "Call in sick to work," she said in a voice that was eerily calm. "Don't go anywhere today, Luna. I can't just hide forever." "You're not hiding. You're being smart. These people are testing you, seeing how far they can push. If you react the way they expect, they'll escalate things even more." Jake wanted to argue, but something about the way Luna spoke made him listen. She sounded like someone who understood this kind of situation much better than she should have. They spent the day replacing his tires and installing new security cameras around their house. Luna seemed to know exactly what kind of cameras to buy and where to place them for maximum coverage. When Jake asked how she knew so much about home security, she just said she'd done a lot of research online. But Jake noticed other things that day that made him wonder. Luna moved differently when she thought he wasn't watching. Her steps were lighter, more careful, like someone trained to move quietly. When they went to the auto shop to get new tires, she kept scanning the area around them, checking exits and looking for potential threats like a professional bodyguard. That evening, Jake's computer at home started acting strange. Pop-up messages appeared on his screen with warnings like "Stop talking" or "Stop breathing" and "Last chance to fix your mistake." Someone had hacked into his personal computer and was using it to send him threats. Luna sat down at the computer and started typing commands that Jake didn't recognize. Her fingers moved across the keyboard faster than seemed humanly possible, and within minutes, she'd not only stopped the threatening messages, but traced them back to their source. "How did you learn to do that?" Jake asked, amazed. "YouTube tutorials," Luna replied, but she didn't look at him when she said it. The next morning brought a new kind of terror. Jake looked out their bedroom window and saw a man standing across the street, staring directly at their house. The man made no attempt to hide what he was doing. He just stood there, watching, making sure Jake knew he was being observed. Luna appeared beside Jake at the window and looked out at the man. Her body tensed like a coiled spring ready to jump into action. "Stay away from the windows," she said quietly. "Should we call the police?" "The police can't help with this," Luna replied. "This kind of problem requires a different solution." Jake wanted to ask what she meant by that, but Luna was already moving away from the window with a purposeful stride. That reminded him more of a soldier than a housewife. Throughout the day, more watchers appeared. A woman in a dark car parked down the street. A man pretending to walk his dog who kept circling their block. Another man sitting on a bench at the small park across from their house, reading a newspaper, but clearly watching their front door. Luna seemed to notice all of them before Jake did. She casually mentioned that they should avoid the front yard, or suggest they order food delivery instead of going to the grocery store. Each time, Jake would look outside and see exactly what she was talking about. "How do you know they're watching?" "US," he asked. "Body language," Luna said. "People who are just walking or sitting normally don't pay attention to one specific house for hours at a time." But Jake was starting to suspect there was more to it than that. Luna seemed to sense things before they happened. She'd tell him to step away from a window seconds before a car would drive slowly past their house. She'd suggest they go to the backyard just before someone would walk by their front fence, trying to peer inside. The final straw came on Friday afternoon. Jake was getting ready to leave for work, despite Luna's suggestions that he call in sick. Again, when his phone rang. This time, the threatening voice had a different message. "Your time's up. We tried to warn you nicely, but you didn't listen. Tonight, we're going to pay you a visit. We're going to explain things in a way you'll understand much better." The line went dead, leaving Jake staring at his phone in terror. These people were done playing games. They were coming for him. When he told Luna about the call, her reaction was immediate and intense. She grabbed his shoulders and looked directly into his eyes. "You're not leaving this house today," she said firmly. "In fact, you're not leaving my sight until this is over. Luna, we have to call the police." "The police can't protect you from what's coming," Luna replied. Then she said something that sent chills down Jake's spine. "But I can." There was something in the way she said those words that made Jake believe her completely. His gentle, kind wife suddenly seemed like the most dangerous person he'd ever met. And for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Jake felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, he was going to survive this after all.